before I started making the film, I didn't set out to make a film about men, but about humans. And the fact that they were all men was more a way to demonstrate the power game between them without confusing this power game with a big power game of sex and gender. And this is all based on my closest friends. And I have to say that my closest friends are men. Since I was a little girl, I've been hanging out more with men. So there's all this mythology about what women and what men are. I started with the first image of the film, which I didn't know what it was. It was, these little beings coming out in the surface of water and in a way addressing this really big rock that blocks them. And I didn't know what that was all about. So I started trying to figure out what these little specks are, whether they're fish or they're alien or, they are babies, or I dream lots of the images that end up in my films, and they become the cornerstones of scripts. So another image was a group of men looking at a man sleeping. In every film there's at least 3 images that to me are the movie, and if someone receives those images and they stay with them, then I feel like I succeeded. It was mostly casting their personalities rather than the way they looked, because it was important that the personalities balance each other out and they created a reaction, a sort of like chemical reaction environment. I knew that I wanted to work for sure with Vangelis Mourikis, who was the actor who played the father in Attenberg. And I knew that I wanted to work with Panos Koronis, who he's a fellow director and a good friend of mine. He had never acted in a movie. Him and I had shared a small scene at Before Midnight by Richard Linklater. It was fun actually working with him in that scene. My films are not realism. They're not 100% naturalism. So there is always a sense of fantasy or science fiction in the way I set them up. In a way, it's a parallel. It's another layer on top of the story or through the story, and I like to construct it with in every detail. Every time before I start a new film, I have to stop and recollect myself, and also collect, almost like a scavenger. And this might take a very long time. So I don't never feel the urgency of making a film. There's usually like the director's biological clock every 2 years. I don't have that. And also I consider producing or programming, because I love programming films and teaching. I consider it equally important. So, and then next year I'm also directing theater for the first time. Last year I loved Mad Max, Fury Road. I thought that was a masterpiece, and I don't really believe in this divide between blockbusters and experimental, because I think the most experimental stuff that I see is usually in blockbusters, good blockbusters. I'm not sure even if it's going to be the next film, but the script that I'm writing right now is so much about architecture. I am very seduced by right now is all architecture. So it's mostly looking at buildings as these beautiful sculptures in space. So for example, I'm a really big fan of Tadao Anto.